So, anything? No. You want me to do the intro this week? Ooh, would you? Mochirondes. Hey everyone. I'm Vaylor's inner critic. I tend to show up in these videos whenever Doofus over here is feeling uncomfortable about what he's saying. The fact of the matter is, we have no clue what to say right now. It's true. We don't know who Rex Orange County is. Never heard any of the songs on the album. We don't even know what genre of music we're about to hear. Honestly, we've never even heard there was such a person as Rex Orange County before Astrid suggested this album. Is there an Apricot princess on like Steven Universe or Adventure Time or something? I don't know, man. Anyway, what I figured I would do is provide you newer viewers with some backstory, since we got quite a bit of attention from last week's baby metal video. See Vaylor over there? He's been around music his whole life, seeing as his dad was a member of the Allman Brothers Band. And he was on the cover of one of their albums. Yeah, that's me. One of the side effects of having a musician as a dad was that he inherited a whole bunch of information and attitudes concerning music. Most of it's been helpful to him, but some of those attitudes have kept Vaylor from getting into music that much of the rest of society has decided is pretty great. Dad sure did have some opinions. So in season 1, we looked at 24 classic albums that Vaylor had never heard before. Stuff by David Bowie, the Beach Boys, the Velvet Underground, a bunch of others. And we didn't listen just once. We're not looking to do reaction videos here. There's so many of them already, right? So instead, we learn the music inside and out. We spend an entire week listening to each album multiple times a day. We learn how to play the music. And only after we've lived with the music for a week do we sit down to talk about it. But even then, we're not looking to just do a traditional album review. Part of what we wanted to do with season 1 was to look into why exactly Brain Trust over here was avoiding the music in the first place. What was it about Vaylor and his upbringing that kept him from getting in on music that everyone else loves? Elvis Costello still seems like a jerk. I know he does, but he's probably not. He was on Sesame Street after all, I guess. After season 1 was over, what we found was that all the albums we looked at were at least 20 years old. So we thought it might be a good idea to look at some newer stuff. But I'm dumb with new stuff. Well, that's why we got Astrid to help. Astrid's way cool. They're Vaylor's kid, in college studying music technology. So it seemed like a great idea to ask them for a list of albums from the past 20 years we needed to check out. And this was one of them. Exactly. So that's what we do here. We look at albums we really should have heard by now, and we do our very best to understand them, hoping to become better and more understanding people along the way. Now, you ready to give Rex Orange County a listen and see what we get? Can I get a cookie first? Yes, but wash your hands. Okay.
And hey, there's much happiness that we're still yet to find. I said you can call me Bosun Rex, and welcome to my life.
Apricot Princess is very nostalgic for me. This was an album I listened to circa my sophomore year of high school. I was excited to revisit this album because I was very fond of it. I was the perfect time in my life. I was getting into a new relationship, and this was definitely an album all about love. So I was very fond of it, and I had very fond, emotional attachments to a lot of the songs, like Waiting Room. One of the first guitar solos I ever learned was in Television. Very fond of this album. So
my first impression. Well, okay, follow me here. If Stevie Wonder and Weezer teamed up and were given the assignment to make a Luther Vandross album, only with Robert Smith from The Cure impersonating Luther Vandross, the result might sound like Apricot Princess. The influence of Stevie Wonder is immediately apparent on a bunch of these songs. They're repeating coda on the end of the first song, Apricot Princess, for example. Tell me these aren't some Stevie sounding chord changes. For goodness sakes, the first two chords on the whole album are a minor to major modulation. Establishing that kind of jazzy Tamla Records kind of a sound immediately. But the very next song, Television / So Far So Good, has a very late 80s, early 90s alternative vibe. Well, at first anyway. The song ends on a set of 2-5-1s resolving into a big Stevie sounding major 7th chord. The third song, Nothing, has minor modulations in its verses, highlighted by a vibraphone line. Sycamore Girl is 100% an 80s R&B slow jam, straight from like Keith Sweat or Al B. Sure. But you could also make the case that it's an homage to Erykah Badu as well, now that I'm thinking of it. Then there are like 3 songs in a row, Untitled, 4 Seasons, and Waiting Room, that have a modern lo-fi feel to them, with auto-tuned whistling on Untitled even. Then there's a quick little piano and sax instrumental, followed by something that starts out sounding a lot like mid-80s alternative, like The Cure or Joy Division. But by the end of that song, it's worked itself up into a full Arcade Fire level of drumming histrionics. Then the album closes with a slow 6/8 thing that reminds me a lot of Waltz in A, the closing music to SNL. Intriguing. Okay, Mr. County, you have my attention. Please continue.
Don't you worry, don't you worry, don't you worry, girl.
I'm not sure if I'm into you. The last time I checked, I was sad and blue.
Revisiting it, I kind of noticed that I had these rose-colored goggles. Rex Orange County, the dude himself, Alex, he's very talented, and he has a very good voice. I just think my biggest problem is that a lot of the songs were predictable. You could tell where it was going, you could tell what he was about to say. But I also might have just outgrown the demographic, I'm not a high schooler anymore. I'm not even a girl. It's not my demo anymore. And maybe it's that, or maybe it's just because I've matured a bit and taken off some of those rose-colored goggles that I'm able to kind of truly see it. What he does do, he does super well, and you can tell that there's a lot of good, jazz influence. Nothing, for example, has a really good bit in it. Sycamore Girl, the lyricist I actually think was his girlfriend at the time singing, but she's very talented, and she has this, deep, sultry voice that I think really complemented the song.
Honestly, when I went through the credits for the album the first time, and I saw so very few instrumental credits and only a few guest artists, I assumed this was going to be another producer-driven dance album like Daft Punk or Gorillaz again. But that's not what this is. There are relatively few musicians listed because this album was made like a Prince or a Stevie Wonder album. The dude just did most of himself. So that's cool. And what I find interesting, the lesson this album teaches about passing on of artistic traditions, about what sticks. I doubt anyone would have predicted 20 or 30 years ago that someone in the world would be making an album that was primarily a synthesis of Stevie and Weezer, and that would actually work. But here we are.
It just don't add up!
There really is no knowing what's going to stick. No real way to know what the next generation is going to keep. After all, it's not up to us, is it? Generational legacy aside, getting back to the album, there's definitely a moving experience, an emotional experience to be had with Apricot Princess. The music by itself is good. I mean, it never fully rises to Stevie levels, but I doubt anything ever will. And if that's my own generational bias showing, then I guess I have to be okay with that.
Okay, Boomer.
Even though Rex Orange County emulates a lot of 70s and 80s R&B, it does something that those artists really never did. And that is he shows his own emotional vulnerability. Which if you're going to pull something from 80s and 90s alternative, that's what you're going to pull, right?
Well, it hurt me. Did I mention that I cried? Is it wrong not to always be glad?
So the music is good. But honestly, that was only a part of the best experience I had with this album. The single best experience I had with this album was towards the end of the week, after I'd already heard it a bunch of times, and I sat down with the album in my hand to read through the booklet it came with as the music was playing. There are these little touches in the photography, like the dates in the pictures that relate to the dates mentioned in the lyrics, for example. It all contributes. I think that the cumulative experience does a better job of creating an overall artistic expression than the music does by itself. And I like that. I appreciate that. It's rare these days.
But there's some good in this world, Mr. Fertile.
I mean, here we have an album that came out in 2017 that actually rewards you for listening to the entire album and paying attention instead of expecting you to only consume 3 to 5 minutes at a time. Good on you, Rex.
I think I've finally lifted my emotional attachment to it, so I'm seeing it more objectively now. So that conflicting with how I saw it before is kind of a hard feeling for me. So
I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know what you like.
But if you're looking for something new, I know someone you could choose.
Hey! What about me? What about me?
About you and me together, something that could last forever.
What about me? What about me?
About me and you together.
Hey! What about me?